Course 3, Lesson 39, we are looking at the circumference of a circle, and then with Lesson 40, we will look at the area of a circle. So there's different parts of our circle, right? And if we're talking about the perimeter around a circle, that is called the circumference. Whereas if we were talking about the line that cuts a circle, it goes from side to side and goes through the middle, goes through the center, we're talking about the diameter. So we can say that the diameter is a line segment which intersects the center of a circle and its points lie on the circle. Now there's one other name that we often use with circles, and that is the radius. And the radius is a line segment that starts at the center and goes and has an endpoint on the circle. This can be anywhere. We use these to find the circumference of a circle by saying that the circumference has this relationship with pi. And the circumference, that perimeter on the outside, is, we can say either 2 times r times pi, 2 times the radius times pi, or pi times the diameter. Since the diameter is just 2 of our radius, that's why we can have 2 different formulas for it. So if we talk about these, remember the distance around the outside edge of a circle, that is called our circumference. Distance from the center to the outside edge, well, that's just half, that's the radius. And the distance from the outside edge to the opposite outside edge going through the center, that is the diameter. So we can use circumference as 3.14 or pi, that's our approximation of pi, or we can use 22 over 7, that's another approximation of pi, times our diameter, or 2 times radius. So let's try it out on this one. If we have a circle that has a diameter of 4, we can say pi times the diameter, or 3.14 times 4. So we do 3.14 times 4 is 12.56. So we can say the circumference is about 12.56. And since we're talking about perimeter, we're just in inches. Now this is an approximation because 3.14 is an approximation of pi. If we wanted to say the exact length of the circumference, we would keep pi as the pi symbol and just say, well, the circumference is 4 times pi inches. That is actually the exact size of the circumference because pi is not being approximated. Let's try it again. With a diameter of 12, we say, all right, 3.14 times 12, and we get 37.68 once we multiply it out, and we are in centimeters. Okay, this is the approximate, whereas the exact would be 12 times pi. All right, let's try a couple examples. Find the circumference of the circle using the given diameter measurement. So in the first one, the diameter of that bicycle tire is 55 centimeters. That means from outside edge all the way through the center to the other side is 55 centimeters, meaning we need to do my diameter times pi. Okay, so I do 3.14 times 55 and get 172.7 centimeters. Now if we have this soccer ball and we say, okay, the radius is 60 millimeters. Well, remember, we can do 2 times the radius times pi. That is our other way of finding the circumference. So pi times 2r. So we do 3.14 times 120 and get that it's 376.8 millimeters, or we can convert that to centimeters. Okay, and lastly, if we want to find the diameter, if we are given the circumference, well, we can say my original formula is circumference equals pi times diameter. So if I want to find the diameter, that means I need to divide by pi on each side. So I'm really going to take the circumference and divide by 3.14. Divided by pi. So I'm going to take my 2.3 and divide by 3.14 to get my diameter of 0.73 or 73 centimeters. Okay. So here are a couple other examples. The diameter of the CD is 11. So what is their circumference? So I can do 11 times pi, or 11 times 3.14. The diameter of the cone is 10 millimeters, so I'm going to do my pi times 10 and go from there. I'm just plugging it into my formula. And same with these two here, except for these are radius, so I'm going to have to multiply by 2 first and then multiply by pi. Now going on to area, there's a bunch of things that we're going to talk about. One, we're going to talk about the formula, how to actually find the area, but we're also going to look at pieces of our circle, which are called my sectors. So the area of a circle we find by doing pi times radius squared. And the radius is 2. I am going to square the radius, so 2 times 2 is 4, and then I'll multiply by pi, 3.14. We get 12.56. Now, what are the units on this? Well, we are in inches, and since we're talking about area, we will be in inches squared. So the radius is 2, and my area is 12.56 inches squared. How about this one? Well, we use our formula, area equals pi r squared, and so I'll do area is 3.14 times 7 squared. Now the other way I could do this, I could work it all out and see that I come out with an area of 153.86 millimeters squared. Or I can realize, well, 3.14 isn't the only approximation of pi. I could also say that pi is 22 over 7. And I could multiply that by 7 squared. Which means I'm going to have 22 over 7 times 49, which I can simplify my 1 to 1 and 7 with the 7 and 49, so that I get an area of 154 millimeters squared. Now you might be asking, why are these different? Well, because 3.14 and 22 over 7 are approximations of pi. They are not perfectly pi. And so we won't always get the same answer when we're working with one or the other, but they are good approximations. All right, so if this is our circle, our diameter is 30, well, remember, I need to use my radius, so I'm going to do 15 centimeters in our formula to do 3.14 times 15 squared. And when we work that all out and do 15 times 15 times 3.14, I'm going to get 706.5 centimeters squared, since we're in area. All right. Here are a couple other examples if you would like to try these out on your own. Okay. You should get 6 millimeters for the radius and 113.4 meters squared for the area. You can try these out, remembering that the formula for circumference is pi times diameter, or pi times 2 times r, and area is pi r squared. So, if we are looking at some of these word problems, a circular table has a diameter of 6 feet. If 4 students sit around the table, then each student has about how many square feet of work area? So we have this circular table, and we need 4 spots. The diameter is 6, which means my radius is 3. So I'm going to find the area of the total thing by using pi r squared and saying that I have 3.14 times 3 squared, which gives me 9 times 3.14. And so I have a total of 28.26. And we are in feet squared. Now, that's the total area, but I want to know how many square feet for each person. And since there's 4 people, I'm going to divide 28.26 divided by 4. Okay, so I'm going to take this and divide by 4. And I see that I get 7.065 feet squared of workspace each. All right, second one. A sprinkler waters a circular portion of the yard. The radius is 7 feet. What is the area that is sprinkled to the nearest square foot? So I'm going to say In this case, I'm going to use the 22/7 approximation times my 7 squared. So I'm going to get 22/7 times 49, which I'm going to simplify. And I have 154 square feet. That's how much the sprinkler is going to cover. Now, once we know how to find the area of the total thing, we can find an area of a sector. By finding the area of a sector, I need to know what fraction of the circle I'm looking at. And so if we look at this sector, it has a central angle of 45 degrees, which means if I say, all right, I have 45 degrees out of a total of 360, I simplify that down and see that I have 1/8 of the circle right here, which means that the other part is 7/8. So maybe I want to find the area of each of those pieces. So I would say, what is the total area? And I would do my pi r squared to get my total area as 16 pi. And I'm allowed to leave it in terms of pi, not multiply it by 3.14 to get an approximation. So if I use that 16 pi and say 1/8 of it is right here and 7/8 is right here, well then I would say 1/8 of 16 pi is 2 pi. So there are 2 pi centimeters squared right here. And if I want my 7/8, I'm going to do 7/8 of 16 pi, which means that I am going to have 14 pi centimeters squared in that section. I can use that fraction to figure out what portion of the area do I have. And so for my semicircle, let's find the total area. And I'm going to use pi r squared. So my total area is pi times 8 squared. Remember, this is the diameter, so my radius is 8. So my total area is 64 pi centimeters squared. That's if I had the entire circle. But I only have half. I have a semicircle. So I'm going to divide this by 2 to get that the semicircle is 32 pi centimeters squared. All right. Let's find the areas of these next couple. All right, so if I have my first one, I have a central angle of 60 degrees, which means 60 out of 360 is 1/6 of the pi. And if my AOC, that's my diameter, meaning I have half of the pi right here, and so what's left is 1/3. Okay, so let's find the total area. The total area is going to be using pi r squared. So my total area is pi times, well, my radius is 6, so I'm going to do 6 squared. So my total area is 36 pi. So if my BOC is 1/6 of 36 pi, that means that I have 6 pi centimeters squared there. BOA is 1/3 of 36 pi, so I get 12 pi centimeters squared, and my AOC is 1/2 of 36 pi, meaning I get 18 pi centimeters squared. All right, and then my second, I have a semicircle with a radius of 36. So I am going to do my pi r squared, and I'm going to do 36 squared, which is 1296 pi inches squared. Now I only have half of the circle, so I'm going to divide by 2 and get that I have 648 pi inches squared. Now we can use the same method to find pieces of the circumference as well. These are called arcs. Okay, part of the circumference is an arc. That's just part of that perimeter. So let's find those part of the circumferences, the arcs, the measure of the arcs. So let me clear some space and I'll show you on this first one. Now remember that our circumference is not using pi r squared anymore to find it. I'm going to use pi times diameter, but I am still going to use the fact that we have 1/6 of the pi, 1/3, and 1/2, because these arcs are all based on those central angles still. So my circumference is pi times diameter, so I'm going to get a circumference of 12 pi centimeters. So if I want 1/6 of it for BOC, that means I'm going to have 2 pi centimeters. 1/3 of it means I'm going to have 4 pi centimeters. And my AOC, 1/2 of it, is going to be 6 pi centimeters. And I could do the same for my semicircle. I could say if I want the arc of this semicircle, then I'm going to do my circumference. The total circumference is 30, or sorry, not 36. 72 pi, 72 pi inches, which means if I want half of that as my arc, I'm going to divide it by 2 and get that my circumference for the arc is 36 pi inches for that arc. Okay. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful for your homework and for studying.